If spending money like water was the answer to our country's problems, we would have no problems now.
And it is another Wednesday night, which means it is time for Modern Comments Radio here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. And so, let's turn it over to our host with the most, hostess with the mostest. I'm still waking up, folks. Here's Amy.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Modern Comments Radio. I am the host with the most, or hostess with the mostest, Amy, and I want to welcome to the program tonight Chris, who you can find on Twitter at CrankyTrex. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show. And
you're on the show, by the way, over my objections because of our discussions regarding Congo earlier today.
Ooh, what's wrong with Congo?
I'm kidding. I was not a big fan of. I wasn't a big fan of the book either. I wasn't a big fan of the entire thing. I actually thought the movie was better than the book.
Well, the best thing about that movie is Tim Curry and the guy from like Zaire or wherever it is that they land. The warlord they got to pay off, and when he walks in there and he's like, have some tea and cake, and nobody touches it, and he's like, have some. So Tim Curry's character picks it up and starts to eat it. He's like, Mr. Homolka, stop eating my sesame cake. And he's got like a full mouthful of it, so he doesn't really know what to do. Like he goes to try and swallow it, and the guy's like, stop eating my sesame cake. So he's like, oh. So Tim Curry just like makes his motion and just spits it out. And then he starts calling him he's like, what are you doing in my country? Why are you with this man? He is a big bag of shit.
I have not seen Congo. I will confess, I have not seen it, and I missed the Great Congo controversy on Twitter this afternoon. But I love Tim Curry so much, so much. So I will have to watch it on your recommendation, Chris.
It's a movie that a lot of people were disappointed with because it wasn't Jurassic Park, and it's not an A movie. It's more like a B movie, but it's just a classic B movie. It's one of those so bad it's good kind of movies because it's goofy and it's kind of ridiculous.
And it has Bruce Campbell in it.
And yeah, and
okay, well then I'm sold.
And it also has Ernie Hudson. It plays their guide, and he's actually pretty good in that movie. He has some of the best lines because he's talking about when they arrive in Africa, right? The Civil War breaks out in the country that they live in, and he gets all the best lines about, okay, that the rebels just blew up the president's car. Did they get him? No, and that's the problem.
Nice. Awesome. Well, if you haven't caught on to the theme tonight, we are not talking politics. It's a completely politics-free Modern Comments Radio. And we're going to spend the entire program talking about something that Chris is amazingly good at, and that's movies. So if you want to join us, you can go to vigilantlibertyradio.us and click on chat and jump in the chat room, or you can tweet me on Twitter at Modern Comments and join in the discussion. We're going to start. Say that again, Chris?
I said I suppose I should get in the chat.
That would be a good idea.
Well, Alan would appreciate it.
Yes.
Or Alan.
But we've talked with movies with Chris before, and so I decided tonight we were going to ditch all of the politics and just focus on talking about what's coming out this summer and some of the movies that are reaching their milestones. And Ever, the expert on movies, Chris sent a bunch of stuff over to me, and I was really amazed by the movies that are reaching milestones. But we'll get to that in the second half of the program. We're going to start now looking at what's coming out.
Wait. But before we go even further, and by the way, I'm Taylor. I'm your producer tonight. But let us all hold a moment of silence for Eli Wallach. May he rest in peace.
Yes.
Indeed.
And remember, if you're going to shoot, don't talk.
Yes.
Exactly. Shoot, don't talk, ask questions later. Yes, and I didn't mean to skip over Taylor, our producer. You can find him on Twitter at iDesertBlog, and he'll be joining the conversation tonight as well. So, I looked at the list of new things that are coming out, and I know, Chris, that you're not a fan of musicals, so it was not on the list. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing this summer is Jersey Boys, because I am a fan of musicals, and I'm a fan of Clint Eastwood, who's directed this. So I think it's going to be great to see. It also has Christopher Walken in it. So
you can never go wrong with Christopher Walken.
I was just going to say, you can never go wrong with Christopher Walken, and it's the story of the 4 seasons. So I plan on seeing that when it comes out, and I have to double check the date on that because I don't remember off the top of my head when it's coming out.
Well, it's got to be soon because the promos have been on pretty. If it's not out already, it has to be pretty close because they've been running that promo on TV pretty much every other commercial for the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and that's how I saw it. I saw it on TV. See if I can find the release.
I'll tell you in a second. I'll tell you in a second.
See, I was going to keep IMDb
it
open.
This past weekend.
I got lazy.
Yep. Opened June 20th.
Well, if you have nothing else to see this past weekend, now's a good time to go see it.
Yeah, so if you haven't, it's out already, and it's one that I'm looking forward to seeing. And obviously, I didn't get to see it this weekend, but there's always next weekend, and the extended holiday weekend would be a good time to go and see it. What are you looking forward to most out of that list that you sent over?
Looking forward to?
Yeah, or...
Well, I guess looking forward to, I would say the one that I'm actually really interested to see is Guardians of the Galaxy, which is the next to the Marvel Universe movies. And that's mostly because the tone they've set with their previews really has this sort of Firefly-esque smartassness to it that intrigues me. And I've said on Facebook, I'm like, this movie is either going to be the best thing ever, or it's going to be the worst thing ever. I don't think there's going to be much of a middle ground on this one because of how far-fetched it is. So I'm looking forward to that.
I tend to agree.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a place where that movie's going to sit where it's going to be like, that was meh. I think it's either just going to be absurdly terrible because of just the general concept where you have like a mostly alien cast and you have a talking raccoon and a tree that only says Groot, played by Vin Diesel.
No. It doesn't just say Groot. Get it right. It says I am Groot.
Oh, okay. You're right.
There's a difference.
Well, he has one line. Let's put it that way. And I think it's going to kind of hinge on whether or not that those trailers are the sum total of the tone that they've set, or if they're going to be able to carry that through the whole movie without it just getting silly.
But here's the cool thing about the I am Groot thing is you know that he recorded it multiple times. It wasn't just once. He recorded it multiple times.
And they had him on set on some funny stilts to walk around to take the place of the character, which is a whole nother discussion about the replacement of costuming in movies with CG and how that affects things.
But with Groot, though, I have to be honest, it makes total sense.
Well, I totally understand why they do it now. I understand why they do it now. I think there's just something better about having actual costumes. And I think if there is a movie on the list that is coming out that proves that better than any, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which comes out the weekend after, which I'm going to avoid like the plague. Because if you look at the way the Turtles look and they were all CG compared to the 1990s costumes that they did.
Yeah.
There's no comparison. The costumes look way, way better, and they were all animatronic. So
I'm still gonna go see that film.
I have to. I'm a child of the '90s. They were big when I was a kid. I might just have to, because of when I was born and when I grew up, go see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I will go see Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't know that much about it until we decided to do this show, and it looks interesting enough that I'm going to go see that too. I'm a fan of the Marvel.
All I have to say about whether I am looking forward to it or not, in the chat I posted something that came in today for me.
I saw that and I just retweeted it out because that is really cool.
They had I got my it's like pop. I don't know what, I forget the company that it's called, but there's these little, for lack of a better term, figures, and they've done stuff like Batman and Robin and Captain America, and they did one of Groot and Rocket Raccoon.
I saw that when you tweeted it earlier, and they're very cute. That's what prompted the Congo discussion.
Yes, it did.
You had tweeted that out, and Alan noticed your bookshelf behind it, and started talking about Michael Crichton movies, and you were talking about the ones that sucked, and I was like, hey, Congo, man, that movie was awesome. We've come full circle in 10 minutes. This is impressive.
That's good radio. Full circle in less than a quarter of the show. Awesome.
Yeah. So, other than Guardians, as far as things, is there anything else on that list that you're looking forward to, Amy?
I know very little about it, but the title itself intrigued me enough. Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. Isn't that
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. I clearly piqued your interest, Taylor.
No, I loved the first. I loved the first film. You don't have to watch the first film, but it would help. The Sin City film first came out in, I guess it was 2005, 2006.
Yeah, it's been a while.
And honestly, it is from 2005, from a pure comic book standpoint, meaning something that is true to the comic book and the comic book origin. It's the best comic book movie ever made. It's
definitely a fantastic adaptation, and the whole style of it just is way different than anything you'd see in any other. The only thing that comes close in terms of trying to capture the style of the source material is 300.
And
this is
300
totally different.
And 300 was done by who? Frank Miller. So
yeah,
and he's also involved with Sin City, so
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
No,
but I mean, we've seen things like similar things like Watchmen, and Watchmen doesn't really try and ape the style of that graphic novel either. So I'm just saying, like, it's still a pretty good adaptation. Yeah,
Watchmen.
it was an interesting adaptation. I know it's sort of like love-hate with a lot of people. Me, I thought the whole parallel history introduction on that movie sold me at the beginning. So I was cool with it. I hadn't read the source material, but I was like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting to me. I can see the actual changes that they've made to these historical events, which I'm sure half the people in the theater did not, because the state of our public education.
Yeah, I have the 4-hour version. That's all I have to say. I have the 4-hour version that combines both the director's cut with some additional stuff and the animated one that came out.
They did an animated one too?
The Tales of the Black Freighter, which was a backup story in the original series.
Yeah.
And they didn't put it in the movie because it would have ended up being 4 hours long. So that's why they did it on DVD.
Best use of the Hallelujah song ever.
Yes. Yes.
When you say the Hallelujah song, which Hallelujah song?
I'm talking the one they use when they're doing it in the owl ship.
Okay.
Have you seen? You've seen it, haven't you? I
have not seen it. No, so that's why I was asking.
Well, I don't know I'm terrible with names and
Give me a minute.
especially music. Taylor can find it for us, and while we
While we have a lull in the action, the thing that Alan put in the chat room, which I had to stifle a laugh, he types Nip poster.
Leonard Cohen.
And Leonard Cohen. I know that I love that song. That's a great song, and the multiple versions that have been made of it are phenomenal.
Yeah, they use that song while two of the characters are
having sex.
Impromptu, having impromptu sex, and it really fits that better than any other place I've seen it used, which is usually things that don't necessarily make you want to scream hallelujah.
Yeah.
The only thing that I can think of it being used in other than that was Shrek. And that wasn't Leonard Cohen's version. That was an adaptation by Rufus Wainwright. Or, take that back. I think Leonard Cohen's version was in the film, but Rufus Wainwright was on the soundtrack.
Yeah, they did use it in Shrek.
The first
it's not. It's just not nearly as good of an effect as it was.
No, but I think that Shrek wouldn't have been nearly as popular if they had gone that route.
You never know.
True.
In this day and age, I don't know. It would kind of been awkward to have an ogre and a princess like doing it, but
those kids had to come forth somehow.
Yeah.
Didn't they
Mommy and Daddy have got a lot of questions.
I've never seen any of the Shrek films.
No?
Oh.
No.
The first one is great. The second one is okay, and then don't bother after that.
Okay.
The third one sucks. The fourth one was better than the third one. I will say that. The third one is awful. But the first one is... I have never laughed as hard at an animated film as I laughed at the scene with the bird and Princess Fiona. And I won't give it away, because then it won't be worth watching it, but you have to go watch it, because I thought I was going to choke on my popcorn when we saw that in the theater. I was in tears. It was so funny. And the scene with Robin Hood will get you too.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't spoil it for you, but yeah, no. Go see the first one at least. And the second one's not bad. The second one has Antonio Banderas, whose name I just love saying. He's one of my favorite actors just because I like saying his name.
That is a great name to say.
Antonio Banderas. He's also the new Zorro in The Mask of Zorro, which is an awesome movie. And
those were good films.
The first one was. The second one was but the first one was amazing. And the thing that I always think about when I watch that movie is how different action sequences are shot nowadays compared to back then in the 90s, because I can see the entire sword fight. I can see every move, and sometimes it looks a little scripted, but most of the time it looks awesome, and it's because they have a steady camera shot with everybody in frame, and they only cut once every couple of seconds after they've gone through a whole like actual exchange of sequence, and everybody is dressed so very differently that you can actually kind of tell who is who. I mean, Antonio Banderas as Zorro is in all black, and then the one of the bad guys is wearing one of the navy blue 1800s military uniforms, so you can actually see what's going on, which you can't anymore, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, going back to the discussion of costuming and everything, I like when it feels more realistic, and CGI has come very far as making movies go. If you go back and watch movies where they were first introducing CGI, it's almost laughable, but I like that feeling of authentic costuming whenever possible. Now, for Guardians of the Galaxy, I get it might not be feasible for a character like Groot, but I'm a fan of that, and I agree. I haven't seen The Mask of Zorro in ages, but I'll have to go back and watch it, because I remember it being enjoyable.
In terms of movies that are coming up that we might actually want to see, The Expendables 3 is going to be out on August 15th. And one of the things that was interesting about the first one is if you watch that movie, it seems like the first half of the movie was shot like a traditional 80s, 90s action flick, which made it look really awesome because the guys that were doing the fight choreography on that movie were fantastic. But then you watch the end sequence, and it's much more like a modern-day movie where everything is dark, everyone is wearing almost the same thing, the camera is right inside the action and moving around and cutting really fast, and it was like the only thing that kind of sucked about that movie for me was they went from having like a standard awesome 80s action flick that I remembered, and then suddenly we were like, late 2000s with all of the hyper-cutting shaky cam stuff, and I was like, oh, come on, the choreography here is awesome. You got Jet Li and Jason Statham. You do not need to be swinging the camera around. These guys can actually do the stunt. Let them do the stunt. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
That
So
is
that
very
would be,
true. I am looking forward to. I am looking forward to seeing the Expendables 3 because they've all been fun movies.
Yeah, they have. I mean, and the bit with Chuck Norris in the last one was worth the price of admission.
I loved that.
I mean, the fact that he just keeps showing up, and like everybody just dies, and then he's like, he had one of the new. He put in a new like Chuck Norrisism just for the movie, which is fantastic. I won't spoil it. People should go watch the movie just so they can see that one line.
And I like it when. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just trailing off there. So go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. No, I like it when somebody like Chuck Norris leans into the sort of that pop culture mythos that surrounds them. I have not seen The Expendables 2 yet, but it's on my list. It's hard for me to watch movies like that because I have 3 little kids, and to find the time where they won't be asking questions about what's going on screen, it is a challenge. But I'm taking notes, and all of these things that I am going to put on my Netflix queue or rent or Redbox to get caught up because there's a lot of good stuff that's going on out there. The other one that's opening on the 15th is The Giver. And
which we talked about, did we not?
I think we did briefly on the previous show, yes. And I'm torn about whether or not I'm going to see that because it looks like it could be very interesting or very depressing. And probably a little bit of both.
Well, I'll tell you if they stick to what actually happens in the book, then it will be exceedingly depressing. But if they decide to Hollywood it up a little, then I think it'll probably be okay, at least in terms of that.
Yeah, and I know that was a popular book for kids that when I was a student teacher teaching in the middle school level. A lot of them read that, and I'm wondering how popular it'll be among that sort of age group who came up reading that book, because it wasn't on my reading list when I was in school. But I have read parts of it in my graduate studies and my education studies, so I'm gonna give that one some consideration and see what that's all about too.
Yeah, I'm curious about it. I don't think I'll see it in the theater, but it's a movie I'll probably end up watching on what we call bad movie night around here. Me and my buddies get together. I have a whole theater set up in my basement, projector, surround sound, the works, stadium seating. So we will usually get movies that have come out recently on DVD or Blu-ray or what have you, and we'll watch them, whether they're good or awful. And that way we can do our own little Mystery Science Theater 3000 to them if they're terrible, which there have been some pretty bad ones this year and some decent ones. Speaking of bad ones, why don't we talk about the things that are coming out that we really don't understand why they're coming out or don't want to go see? Or
well, okay. I will say this: I'm not 100% sold on the new Transformers film.
Here's my take on that. Okay, the last 3 were bad. The first one was a guilty pleasure, and it was just because I totally could identify with the character of Sam, chasing after the hot girl and wanting the fast car thing. I had no expectations going into that movie. I figured it was gonna be awful, but I totally was
I enjoyed it.
I knew exactly who that kid was, so for me, I was able to watch that movie despite it being an Orsi and Kurtzman flick and just enjoy myself. When we got to the second one, that one became just almost unwatchable in terms of its plot was just all over the place. The third one kind of came back a little bit, but it still wasn't very good, and you still had a lot of editing problems.
1 and 3 are the best ones.
Yeah. So when it comes to the fourth one, it's I'm not. You would think experience would tell me you should not see this in the theater. But the problem is every time I see that commercial where Mark Wahlberg crashes the alien spaceship into some guy's car, and the guy's like, "I hope you got insurance," and he's like, "It's a freaking spaceship, honey. Hand me my alien gun." For some reason, that scene just makes me want to go see this movie just so I can watch that in context and laugh.
Because
so I may go see
it's Mark Wahlberg, and he's in it. Stanley Tucci, who I love, and Kelsey Grammer are the 3 big names in this film, and I think that would be a draw enough for me to go see it. And it's because it's such a big action film, you'd almost have to see it in the theater. You'd be missing out on that sort of experience.
Well, it is
I'm
3
not seeing
hours
it
long.
in 3D, I'll tell you that.
Say that again?
I'm not seeing it in 3D.
Oh,
I'll go
God,
see
I
it in
hate
2D.
I hate
would
3D. I
no.
think it's such a tired, stupid gimmick that we're trying to desperately bring back from the 50s. I mean, it just, first of all, it's not 3D. It's like 2.5D. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not able to actually move around and see things from different angles. You just get a little bit of perspective that you might not get otherwise. 99% of all the movies are post-converted, which means they're not shot with that in mind, which means that they either look funny or they don't really do anything with it. And the 1% that are shot with that intention, it doesn't really, for me, it doesn't really change the experience any.
No.
I don't really see the need for it. I don't need to have it's not immersive enough for me to feel like I'm any more immersed in it than it would be if I were just watching it too.
No, I saw, only because of the times and the schedule that I had, I went and saw Gravity in 3D. I enjoyed the movie. Was it the best movie I've ever seen? No, but I enjoyed it. I just don't think the 3D added anything to it. In fact,
I think the 3D on that movie would make you sick. Like that scene where Sandra Bullock is just like flipping over and over again. I was watching it in 2D and I was starting to get a little dizzy. I'm like, okay, can we stop?
Yeah, no,
like, this is going on way too long.
That's what I was gonna say. There are two times in the movie theaters where I can remember being made physically like dizzy, ill from watching the movie. This Gravity was one of them in 3D. I had to close my eyes at certain points because I felt like I was going to throw up. And then it's an old one, but the end of the reboot of King Kong with Adrian Brody and Jack Black, scene at the end where King Kong is falling off the building and he's spinning one way, the ground is spinning another way, and the camera is spinning like a third way.
Yeah.
That got me.
There was plenty of reasons to be nauseous about that movie before you actually got to that point.
Point to you for that. I did manage to sit through the whole thing, and I very clearly remember closing my eyes and telling my friend, tell me when it's over because it's going to make me dizzy. It's making me dizzy. It's making me not feel good. And Gravity was the same way with the 3D. I mean, it didn't add anything. At one point toward when she's going through everything, she's crying, and there's a tear that floats out in the 3D, and it's just one of them. And that was kind of cool because it balls up like liquids do in space. But other than that, I could have seen it in 2D and been completely fine. And I probably still would have gotten dizzy because it was pretty intense visually.
So speaking of giant apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that's July 11th. I still don't see the point. I saw the last one and it was meh. So
I saw the last one and hated it. I would have left if I hadn't been seeing it with friends.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed with the last one either.
It was kind of like, the thing about the whole Planet of the Apes thing, nobody really cares what happened to ruin the planet, and you put the apes in charge. Like, that's not really the interesting part of that story. The interesting part of it, once you know the twist has happened, that's it. Like, at that point, we've covered the cool part.
At least it's not directed by Tim Burton.
Not a fan of Tim Burton?
No, I'm not a fan of his version of Planet of the Apes.
Oh,
you didn't like Mark Wahlberg in that?
No.
It was one of his like breakout movies, wasn't it? He was in the Planet of the Apes remake.
I didn't like that film at all.
It wasn't very good, and I didn't care for the whole Lincoln statue version as opposed to the destroyed Statue of Liberty. It was kind of like the whole point was the only reason that they were in charge is that we destroyed the planet. So what the heck?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, on that note, speaking of giant apes and transitioning to older films, which Planet of the Apes was a reboot of, we're going to take a few minutes to take a break, and we'll be back, and then we're going to talk about some movies celebrating milestones this year.
All right. We'll be back right after this. This is the Modern Comment Show here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. Back after this.
Hi, I'm Dustin Hoyt with America Our Way, and you can hear me right here on Vigilant Liberty Radio at 10/9 Central on Thursday nights. We bring you the best and political commentary from the right-wing, conservative, libertarian perspectives coming together and bringing the best content on the internet. Be sure to tune in every week for your favorite shows. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter.
We want to welcome Michael Moore to Occupy Wall Street. I'm so impressed by what I'm seeing here.
How much of people's income do you, Michael Moore, want the government to confiscate?
Probably twice what we're paying right now.
It's not envy, it's war.
Where's the rage? Where's the uprising?
Storm the doors of the New York Stock Exchange.
It is a class war.
If the wealthy paid their fair share.
For a documentary filmmaker, I do really well. I'm very blessed.
And the rich thought poverty was bad.
I do well.
They get rid of it.
What pure? There's nothing pure about capitalism.
And they know what's coming on Wall Street.
We're seeing the end of capitalism. And I say good riddance.
He is one of my favorite capitalists. Yeah, I want to give him a hug.
Hi, this is Missy Bordius. Join me as I share my womanly bits on the Conservative Feminist Show, 11 p.m. on Fridays, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio.
And back here on the Modern Comment Show, here on Vigilant Liberty Radio. And I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thanks, Taylor, and welcome back to the second half of the Modern Comments radio show this evening. I am on with Chris, Cranky T-Rex, and Taylor, and we are talking about movies. And the first half of the show, we talked about some of the new releases that are coming out this summer that we're looking forward to, that were interesting, maybe some that we're going to avoid. In the second half of the show, we are going to talk about some movies that we would recommend rewatching this summer, or movies that are celebrating milestones. And Chris sent over a list, and some of the milestones that were on the list really surprised me and made me go, oh wow, it has been that long. And we're going to start first because we're getting close on the 4th of July. I don't believe it's a movie that's celebrating a milestone this year, but it's one that both Chris and I said we watch around the 4th of July, and that's Independence Day.
Yeah, I always try and watch it on the 4th. Most of my friends have stopped, but it's just became a tradition, 5-10 years ago. It's a movie that I saw in the theaters when it came out, and I totally loved it. I still think it's awesome. I think it's how you do a big disaster movie just right. And we haven't had too many big disaster movies since then that have done it in a way that has ever recaptured the kind of magic I think that movie had.
No, everything in that movie clicked. From Will Smith to Jeff Goldblum, who I love in that movie, I'm going to blank on his name, but the guy who played Jeff Goldblum's coworker.
Yeah, I know who you're talking. I can't remember.
Harvey
I'm terrible
something.
with names. I'm terrible with names, so you can't rely on me for that stuff.
To Bill Pullman as the president, even. Was it Vivica? No, I'm gonna.
Vivica Fox.
Vivica Fox as Will Smith's fiance, girlfriend, wife. Eventually, sorry, I mean to give away a plot point there. But I'm guessing most people hopefully have seen Independence Day by now.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Independence Day by now, I mean, come on.
Yeah, if I spoil it, sorry. Also, Randy Quaid.
Yeah, Randy Quaid is awesome in that movie, playing the drunk guy who had been abducted by aliens. Who
nobody believed, and he ends up being.
Savior of the planet, basically.
Savior of the planet, and just the way he goes out. And I gotta tell you, the speech that Bill Pullman gives right before they're gonna start attacking the ships, I think it's one of the greatest sort of monologues in that genre of film.
It's definitely one of the best movie speeches ever, right? Like, and I mean that differently from like quotes. I mean like that kind of thing where like you're gonna have the main character come out and they're gonna do, they're gonna do their rally the troops thing. It's definitely one of the ones at the top of the list. That and maybe the one from the President in Armageddon, Picard's thing in First Contact. Like that kind of thing. It's in the top tier
Patton.
of all that stuff.
Yeah, and
Patton, that's a good one. Yeah,
and it's funny. There's some great humor. When Will Smith gets into the chase through the desert with the alien and eventually crashes the alien spaceship and just starts wailing on the alien's unconscious body, that made me laugh out loud. When he's with Jeff Goldblum and they're going up to the mothership and they kind of realize, hey, we might die, so we're just gonna roll with this. Hysterical. It is a movie that'll make you laugh, and it just.
Surprise cameo in that movie. Brent Spiner, who played Data on Star Trek: The Next Generation, plays the goofy scientist guy.
And did a great job as the goofy scientist guy.
He did.
Help me.
Yes.
Help me.
What code? Adam Baldwin is also in that movie. Everybody forgets, by the way.
He is. He is in one of the command centers, if I recall correctly, right?
He's in Area 51. He's sort of like the head military guy at Area 51, and he has one of my favorite like facial expressions in the whole movie, where they walk up to the clean room and the president says, "Open the door," because he wants to go inside, and Adam Baldwin says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. President, it's a clean room. Got to keep it static free," and he just goes, "Open the door," and Adam Baldwin just has this priceless sort of okay. expression on his face.
All right, you're the president. I'm not going to disobey an order from the commander-in-chief. Yes. So if you haven't...
Why are they making a sequel?
To what?
Independence Day.
Okay, that I did not know.
Yeah, they are. They whether or not that actually happens remains to be seen, because they keep having people like on board and then not on board, and then like Will Smith was going to be in it, and then he wasn't going to be in it, and then he's going to be in it again, and I don't really think that's ever actually going to get made.
If you don't come up with something creative and original, stop with the reboots and stop with the sequels.
Yeah, like we were talking about in the chat room. The latest one I heard about is they're doing War Games again. Like I don't see how you do that again and have that have anything close to the charm of the first one.
The charm of the first one was part of it was because of the era that it was set in, and Ali Sheedy and Matthew Broderick, who I said in the chat room I had a huge crush on. So I watched War Games, I watched Glory, I watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If Matthew Broderick was in it, I probably was going to sit down and watch it. So I have seen War Games. Don't mess with it. And they're going to do a reboot of Annie that looks like it's going to be truer to the stage version. But the movie, we were talking about Tim Curry at the beginning of the show. Tim Curry in Annie was one of my favorite characters. He was so over the top. The only person who was more over the top than him in that movie was Carol Burnett. And that's like a piece of my childhood, and you're redoing it, and don't. And Alan brings up a good point in the chat room. How do you do a movie like War Games without the Cold War? Because,
as I said to him, the same way you do Red Dawn without the Soviets. And speaking of which, if you haven't seen the Red Dawn reboot, don't.
I wasn't planning on it. I only recently saw Red Dawn, the original one.
I have not seen Red Dawn, but I will put it on my list.
It's so embarrassingly bad. It's I like Chris Hemsworth, but man, it's
No, the original one. The original one is great.
The original one. Well, the original one is Patrick Swayze, so there's +5 right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
other movies? What other movies from this list that have hit milestones do you think they might be rebooting next?
I'll say The Matrix.
Actually, I think they are doing a new. I think they're doing a new trailer, new trilogy for that. Actually, I think that actually is slated.
Oh, brother.
Which will be interesting to see how they do that.
If they do it well, it'll be huge. The keywords being there, if they do it well.
The first one was great. Okay, I didn't hate that. I actually liked the second one, but with a caveat, knowing that they had to expand, and they expanded ways that that they weren't that they weren't that I think people weren't expecting by introducing all the other programs and basically making them all Greek gods and stuff like that. But at the same time, that's one of those films where they really should have only done one film.
I mean, that movie wraps up. Like, the end of that movie, that story is over. There's really nothing else to tell about that. I mean, you could tell another story, but it just wouldn't be anything compared to the original, and the sequels weren't for that reason. It was just kind of like the arc that they had put forth in that movie was done, and there was really nothing else, to especially with the way it closes out with Neo basically saying, "I'm going to show these people a world that you won't let them see, and we'll see how that plays out." Instead of doing that in the second movie, they just sort of reset that because they couldn't do that and then have their story continue the way, just still be able to do the stuff in the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to continue that because everybody, half people would have been waking up, and you would have had, all this upheaval, and you wouldn't have been able to do this stuff that they did in the first movie, and that would be a problem. And the Matrix turned 15 in March, so that's why it's on the list.
I can't believe it turned 15.
Yeah, I can't.
Speed is 20.
Speed is 20. The thing that kills me is Ghostbusters is 30, and
they're going to be re-releasing it in August in theaters. I
am going to go see that in a heartbeat because I loved Ghostbusters, and God rest him, I loved Egon. He was my favorite character, and I was so sad when Harold Ramis passed away. I know he was very ill, but he was my favorite character.
If you hadn't stopped me. That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No, I was quoting the movie. You remember that?
Okay, I missed that. I thought I cut you off.
No. It was just the first Egon quote that comes to mind whenever I think of that movie is when they're in the elevator and talking about how he tried to drill a hole through his head, and he's like, "That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me."
I remember that one, and that one is where Ghostbusters 2, which is not celebrating a milestone, it wasn't as disappointing as some sequels have been. I can watch both of them and enjoy both of them, but the first one was just phenomenal. When at that scene on the building where they clear mind, and Ray thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it's just
that's not something that could be really topped. But I mean, there's nothing terribly wrong with the second one. I know a lot of people give it a lot of hate, but I think it's a perfectly fine sequel to that movie. And they've been trying to make a sequel to Ghostbusters forever. It's like Dan Aykroyd's pet project, and he just can't get it done because everybody's like, "No." But
sometimes you just let it go. It was what it was. It was awesome. Let it go.
Wait till they reboot it.
Ruben Fleischer is considered to be the new director for this. For Ghostbusters 3.
It's not going to happen now. I mean,
no.
Bill Murray doesn't want to do it. Harold Ramis is now dead. It's not going to happen. Like that when he died, I was like, okay, well, that pretty much is it for Ghostbusters 3. If they're going to do it again, they'll reboot it, and Dan Aykroyd will make a cameo, and if they're really lucky, Bill Murray will make a cameo, and that will be that.
And that'll be that, and that's exactly how it'll go. And that would. I don't think it would work unless they really, really did the movie right and continued the story. And in my mind, there's no way that they can do that. That won't be their own, atomic blast in a refrigerator kind of thing,
Yep. It's a pretty impressive list this year.
It is a pretty impressive list.
You had. I'm just going to run down some of the ones that I don't think we really have to go over again. Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom was 30 in May, and Last Crusade was 25. I don't think there's anything that needs to be said about those movies. Gremlins is 30 in June.
Have not seen it.
Never seen Gremlins?
I've never seen Gremlins either.
Wow, that's a classic semi-horror.
I have also never seen E.T.
No? Okay, good. I don't feel so bad because I've never seen E.T. either. Not in its entirety. I've seen bits and pieces of it, and I know
Now let me explain why I haven't. All right, let me explain why I haven't. I never saw it when I was a kid, and I tried to watch it when I was 18. I tried to watch it when I was 18 years old. And I watched the first 5 minutes and went, I'm bored, and turned it off.
Well, you gotta go back and watch it now. It is one of the classics. Or you can go on the ride at Universal Studios Florida and solve that problem. Alan pointed out in the chat room, Batman, Tim Burton's version, turned 25 just a couple days ago, which is kind of relevant because they're going to do Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice title of wannabe Justice League prequel 5, I think they're calling it now.
I'm looking forward to it.
I hated Man of Steel, so I'm just kind of like.
Why did you? Okay. Why did you hate Man of Steel?
Why did I hate Man of Steel?
Yeah.
Because it was terrible. That's why. Because it's a Superman movie. It's a Superman movie that cannot be a Superman movie. It's just exact opposite of what a Superman movie is supposed to be. Because Superman is. How do they put it in how it should have ended? Man of Steel was not inspiring. Period. That's it. That's what it comes down to.
I saw Man of Steel and it wasn't, and the plot felt clunky to me.
Okay, then you know what all I have to say as I look at my Man of Steel DVD and my Man of Steel soundtrack.
The soundtrack was fine. There was most of the soundtrack was good. The part how I described it in my review, that movie is basically a movie that was built to make a really awesome trailer. Okay, the trailer was great, and it's because it took all of the pieces of the movie that were actually good and then just crushed them down in 2.5 minutes with that awesome Zimmer score behind it, and just made it look like it was going to be the most epic thing ever. And then the movie is just a plodding, gray, dumb mess that just totally craps all over the character because he's just like punching his way through downtown Metropolis, leveling half the city, and he's supposed to be like the guy who's going to bring hope to humanity. I mean, seriously, after that happened, everybody would have to have nightmares about Superman like throwing a truck into their house. You know, there's nobody going to be going out there with the Superman cape on. Oh, Superman saved the world. Yeah, right. His first outing, the only time anyone had ever even met him, he leveled a small town, a cornfield, and a major metropolitan area. I mean, who was good? And then he was throwing satellites. I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna like Superman after that. I don't even know how he becomes a hero.
I loved it.
He would be hated. And the worst part about it is the whole ending of Zod thing.
Oh,
where I'm standing there going,
stop
I'm
it.
just
He
going,
had no choice there.
He had plenty of choice. I'm going,
he had no
jump
choice.
Up. Jump up. Just jump. He could have just jumped, and that would have been it. He has Zod by the neck.
Okay, we're not going to spoil anything.
I didn't spoil it. I'm just saying he has him. All he has to do is jump, and the whole problem, that immediate crisis goes away. But he doesn't because he's retarded, because he's a stupid Superman.
I am enjoying this conversation so much. The
movie was terrible. The movie was terrible, and people need to stop apologizing for it and pretending otherwise. We need to get back to something that is not just depressing as hell. And then the whole thing with Pa Kent is probably one of the most cliched, nonsensical, stupid moments I have seen in movies in a long ass time.
Which moment was that? I missed that.
The whole thing with the tornado. From the second they get in the car to the end of that sequence, it is just one train wreck of stupid, and it hurt my brain just watching.
Okay, yeah, I will give you that I was just kind of like, okay.
And you know what the worst thing about that is there's a moment in there, and I don't want to spoil it, not that it really matters because I'm sure people can figure out what happens, but there's a moment where Kevin Costner did a bit of acting that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and at the same time the other half of my brain is going, but this is so dumb. Like this doesn't make any sense why this is happening. But the other half of my brain's going, but this is a really good bit of acting. And
at least it wasn't Superman Returns.
Superman Returns at least tried to be Superman. It still sucked. It made Superman into a creepy stalker. But but at least he didn't like slaughter half of a city. So I mean, in balance, I don't know which is worse. I'm gonna have to take that one just because they were at least trying to do something and they just sucked at it. And this one, they weren't really trying to do anything.
It ruined Bryan Singer's career until Days Future Past.
Pretty much, yeah. I'd say so.
Okay. Do you get that off your chest, Chris?
Yeah, I'll. It's a good thing we didn't have Sargex on, because she would have gone on a lot longer. Because Superman is like her all-time favorite character, and she hated it so much, and I felt so bad for her because she loves that character.
I didn't hate it quite as much as you, and I didn't love it quite as much as Taylor. I'm somewhere in the middle.
It's one of those movies that I didn't like. I came to hate afterwards. Like when I got out of it, I was like, okay, that was kind of crappy. But over time, as I think about it, it starts to just piss me off more.
And obviously, very strong opinions about it, and that's why I love talking movies with you, because you're so passionate about it and you know what you're talking about, and it's so enjoyable to listen to you rail against the flaws in Superman or Frozen or any other movie. But there are a couple others on this list that I want to run down quickly because we're getting close to the end of the show now. One you talked about was Iron Giant, which will be 15 in July. And that is one I have not seen that I'd like to see with my kids because it's animated, right?
Yes, it is. It's a great movie. It's a great kids movie. It's one of the best animated movies, I think, of all time. That also has Vin Diesel in it. Believe it or not, he plays the Iron Giant, which is not saying much because he doesn't actually say very much in the movie. But it's a fantastic movie, and I would definitely recommend that if you haven't seen it. So get that one.
And we're going back. One that was not on Chris's list, but one that I brought up that I love, that's celebrating its 60th anniversary this summer, is Hitchcock's Rear Window. And I love it for several reasons. I love Jimmy Stewart, and I love Grace Kelly, and the movie is so well done. It's based on a short story, and it remains pretty true to that short story, and just everything about that movie intrigues me, and I could sit down and I could watch it every day for a week and not get bored with it and find something else to enjoy. And I don't know, have either of you seen Rear Window?
I don't think I've seen the original, but I've seen the concept has been redone so many times since then that I know the general story of what happens and seen the different twists that people have done on since then.
You need to see the original, because the original is just it's classic Hitchcock, and the tension that builds up and the relationship between James Stewart's character and Grace Kelly's character is so well done in that movie. And now I'm going to draw a blank on his name. He played Perry Mason. What was his name?
See, now that you said it, I just lost it. Alan
says in the chat room you have to see it. There's a character named Miss Torso, so you definitely have to see it.
The reason I've never seen most of Hitchcock...
Raymond Burr.
Raymond Burr,
Thank you,
yes.
Alan. Alan in the chat room said it's Raymond Burr. He is in there as the suspect who lives across the courtyard from James Stewart's character. And it's a phenomenal classic film. And Alan said in the chat room it's a top 10 movie, period, and I agree. If I had to list my top 10 favorite movies, Rear Window would be on there. Absolutely would be. We have like another minute or two. Is there anything else on the list that you want to mention, Chris?
Well, I'll just hit a couple of them, and then I'll talk about one of my favorites. So Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, 25 this month. Forrest Gump is 20 in July. And The Abyss is 25 in August, and then later this year we're going to have The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction turning 20, The Little Mermaid turning 25, and Terminator being 30. But even though The Shawshank Redemption is probably the movie I think is the best movie ever made, I'm going to talk about True Lies, which turns 20 this July and is another movie that I would rewatch because that is a classic, awesome Arnold movie, and if you haven't seen that, definitely go see True Lies. Eminently quotable film. Yes. Stop cheering me up. Probably being one of the best movies ever. There's also you were talking about the striptease scene in the chat room.
And Yes, and
Jamie Lee Curtis.
I am a woman, but I gotta tell you that scene is unbelievable. That is an incredibly sexy scene, and just the way she still brings the character in when she leans over the bed and the thing she's trying to hide falls out of her brassiere. It's so great. That whole scene is unbelievable.
My favorite part of that is when he drops the tape recorder. Right, he's sitting there and he's trying to be all cool in the dark, and she does some move, like I think she twirls around and then bends over, and he drops it, and he's like scrambling to pick up the tape recorder. That's that movie is also
movie where there's lots of humor.
Yeah, that's a movie that I quote all the time when I'm working with computers. You remember that the one scene where the bad guy slaps the villainess or whatever, and he goes, "You stupid, undisciplined bitch," and I say that all the time whenever my computer is misbehaving. It just probably makes me some kind of misogynist, but
yes, all women.
Yes, all women.
And also yes, all we're running out of time. So, Chris, where can we find you?
You can find me at CrankyTrex on Twitter. You can find me at crankytrex.blogspot.com, where I have things like my Man of Steel review, which is called Man of Lead. Go read it, and you'll know why Taylor's totally wrong about that movie.
And we're not going to go there.
Yeah, and you can also check out some of my stuff at theirfinesthour.net, which is Ellen Bordia's site. I've been cross-posting most of my newest movie reviews over there. So I think that's everything. Yeah.
All right, Amy, you are at Modern Comments.
I am, and you can find me at my blog, moderncomments.wordpress.com, and I cross-post some of my blog stuff at Real Raw Right, and we definitely have to do this again because I enjoyed this immensely, both of you, and I had a really good time, and thank you, Chris, for being on the show, and thank you, Taylor, for producing, and giving me the best discussion on Superman I think I've ever been a part of. So
we'll catch y'all next week. Right Wars next.
Have a good night.
This show is copyright by VLR Media. All opinions of panelists and guests are their own and may not reflect the opinion of VLR Media, the host, or anyone else.